I do think the issue of stereotypes is quite big. I think we just tend to
Hmm.
stereotype people and put them in boxes. I think if someone looks a certain way, we're just automatically saying, okay, this person is from X, Y, and Z. But honestly, there are layers and layers under a person's
Yes.
identity. Like even myself, like people just look at me and assume, and I'm like, no, that's not just it. There is a lot more than that. So please
Hmm.
don't put me in a box. I think people have
Yeah.
this tendency. I think people need to be a bit more open-minded and be more curious, especially with the questions that they ask,
Yeah.
because even simple questions such as where are you from? It's very difficult to answer sometimes, very difficult because
Hmm.
I personally do not know what that means. Does it mean where I grew up? Does it
Hmm.
mean where my parents are from? Does it mean the country where I
Right.
studied? Does it mean the country where
Hmm.
I've been living? Does it mean the country where I've been working from? Like, what does it mean? Is it my
Mm.
passport? Because that it changes.
Okay. Yeah, you're making a really important point here. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Phoebe Brako, therapist, immigrant daughter, and someone who has spent far too much of her life explaining to immigrant parents that boundaries are not disrespect. Okay. So today's episode is one that I've been looking forward to a lot for a very long time because we're going to be talking about something that so many immigrants and children of immigrants are experiencing, but they don't always have the language for identity. Not just where you're from, not just where you live, but more of who you've become and who you become when you're constantly navigating different cultures, expectations, language, and also versions of yourself. Many of us grew up learning to adapt, right? We learned how to do some code switching. We learned what versions of ourselves worked when we were at school, when we went to church, when we went to the mosque, what version also worked at home, and what version kept everybody happy. But somewhere along the line or somewhere along the way, we started asking questions like, who am I when I am not adapting? So my guest today is someone who has spent a great deal of time exploring that question. Urmi Hossain is an author, a speaker, finance professional. Ooh, can I hold on to that finance professional? Like Urmi, it sounds like you chose the profession that the parents were, hoping for, right? And Urmi is also the host of the podcast Stories Beyond Borders. And through her work and her writing, she does a lot of exploration around identity, belonging, self worth, and what it means to build a life that reflects who you truly, truly, truly are. So, Urmi, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, yeah. Also, I want to make sure that I'm pronouncing your name properly.
You are.
Perfect. All right. Sweet. Sweet. Okay. So before we get into the deep stuff, I have to ask, what is something about you that would surprise people who only know your professional accomplishments? Which, by the way, you have a lot of wonderful accomplishments.
That's a very good question. I'm not sure. I feel like I'm an open book, to be
Yeah.
honest.
Yeah.
I think I probably have not discovered them myself
Mm.
when it comes to that question. What is something that people do not know about me besides
Yeah.
my accomplishment? I
Yeah.
think I'm quite open about that, and
Yeah.
I think I have nothing to hide.
Yeah. Well, good for you. And I mean that in itself is a level of congruence that not many of us are able to have in some ways. Like I think about myself and I think about how some of my students, whenever we're in class, something might come up and I talk about, oh yeah, so I was playing my video game and they look at me like, wait, Dr. Phoebe, you play video games? Like what? Huh? Because people look at me and they don't really think about that. Sometimes people are surprised when I tell them that I was a praise and worship leader at my church that I sing. Because a lot of times people will maybe hear me in the hallways at the office just love singing random Michael Jackson songs and things
Ah.
like that. So sometimes there's those secret talents or things that we do without even thinking about how people would perceive those things, and it's not even like
Mhm.
intentional,
Mhm.
that
Well,
sort of thing.
well, if I could add to it, but it's not a secret to be honest, because it's like pretty much out there. But
Hmm.
well, people who do not know me, like based on my social presence, if they meet me for the first time and then we start talking and I tell them, "Oh, I do boxing," I think
Oh.
that's probably like maybe a surprising element because I don't think
Hmm.
they expect me to do that, and then I probably look a certain way. I probably do not look like I'm a boxer. I think they have a certain ideology of what a boxer looks like, especially a
Yeah.
female boxer, and then
Yeah.
I'm like, yeah, I do boxing, so you better not mess up with me.
See? Yeah. Huh. That's interesting. That is that's a great answer too, by the way. That is great. Because I would not have thought
Thanks.
about that. And I love to start here too, because social media and resumes are always going to tell us one story or like one aspect of people. And we sometimes forget that there's always a whole human being behind all of those things, behind the achievements, the accolades, all the fancy schmancy things. And speaking of that, also as I was saying that, I just also thought about the fact that I love to dance in stores. Like they have a really good song going. I'm that random person that you see dancing, and sometimes I get my kids to even join in with me. So if you see a mom dancing with her kids at Five Below, it's probably me. So but speaking of that, you've lived across cultures, you've lived across different languages. You speak, how many languages do you speak?
I right now I actually say almost five, and the almost
Wow.
is actually my Spanish, which is a work in progress, and I do
Okay.
actually actively work on it. That's the one that
Uh-huh.
like I'm taking classes, conversation classes. I would say
Okay.
almost five.
Nice, nice, nice. Okay, okay. So, yeah, so you've done the things, right? Across cultures, across languages, identities. Was there ever a moment for you, or me, where you realized I've spent so much time adapting to everyone else that I am not fully sure who I am anymore? And if so, how did that connect to like expectations of your family or what your parents were expecting of you, growing up?
Yes, I definitely felt that way for many, many years. And I think I felt mostly that way when I was a teenager and even in my early adulthood. I think because of the different cultures I was growing up in, and also the different cultures that I was exposed to. I feel like I was always adapting myself based on the people that I had around me.
Mm.
So when I was around, let's say my Italian friends, I was a certain way. When I was
Yeah.
among Bengali people, I was a certain way. And when I was with people that were completely different, I was a different way. Like I feel like I was never truly being myself and probably trying to fit an ideology based on people's expectations. And I think it took me a while to figure that out, that I cannot live based on what people think of me, but I have to live based on how I feel about myself. And so it took a while, to be honest. I think I really had to come to that realization that I'm not being my most self, and it's
Yeah.
important that I can say things freely. So yeah.
Wow. You said that so, 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 so beautifully. And I can't help but wonder if maybe this realization was a gradual realization or if it was like a sudden realization?
No, it was more gradual. It was
Yeah.
very, very gradual until like it hit a peak point. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, okay, enough of this, enough of like, being portrayed based on what people want me to be,
Mm-hmm.
enough of like seeking external validation. And it's okay to put myself first in that case and just
Yeah.
prioritize my identity.
Yeah.
But it took a while. I think the peak point really just came really afterwards in my life, especially after moving to Canada and people asking me questions such as where are you from? Who are you? People labeling me, people like
Yeah.
defining me sometimes based on my look and my accent. And I didn't fully like that. I didn't like that people had some certain ideology and biases based on what they would hear and the accent that they would hear. And I was like, you know what? You're not gonna
Yeah.
decide for me. I'm gonna decide for myself.
Yeah. Yeah. That is so real. And you mentioned moved to Canada. Where did you move from?
From Italy. I moved from
Okay.
Italy to Canada and currently based in Montreal, which is a melting pot. So many
Yeah.
cultures. It's crazy.
Hmm. I've heard that about Montreal, and I also I still haven't made it to Canada. I'm all over the place, but it's so funny that I'm just a couple of hours drive away from Canada from BC, and I still haven't gone out there. It's just I'm not even sure what that is about, but that is yeah. I've heard that about Montreal, and maybe one of these days I might come up and pay y'all a visit, grace y'all with my presence.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
You should.
Yeah. I'll come out there. What is like the biggest cuisine that is when it comes to food in Montreal?
So I think for Montreal, if you definitely come here, you have to try the poutine. I don't know if you have ever heard of the poutine, but it's a
Mm-mm.
thing of Montreal. It's a thing of Quebec. Don't have poutine in other provinces because they're not known for that. And
Okay.
so poutine is basically French fries, and then you have cheese on top. It's called card cheese, I think. It's like a very squishy cheese that you put on top of the French fries, and then
Uh-huh.
you put this gravy sauce, and it's supposed to like melt the cheese. It's junk food, but it's actually so good. It's comfort food. You have to try this when you come to Montreal.
Okay. Okay. That reminds me of chili cheese fries here in the US, and I hate that. I don't know. I've never understood the appeal. I've never understood, I'm sure people are gonna listen and be like, "What? How'd you not like chili cheese fries?" Because people like it, and I don't understand. Because that was one of the things that I really struggled with when I moved to America as an immigrant. They put cheese on everything, right? They put cheese on
But
everything. But what you're describing, I think, might be something that might be worth a try just because you said.
well, I love cheese, to be honest. I put cheese in everything too.
I'm getting there. I'm getting there. No, I've developed a love for cheese. Once I figured it out and figured out which ones I like, yeah,
Yeah, cheese is
I
so
think I go
good.
back. Yeah. Yeah. Until it starts to mess with your stomach.
Yeah,
But
that
anyway.
is also true.
Yeah. So back to what we were talking about. I think that so many immigrant children become experts at adaptation before they even get the opportunity to explore what is my identity, right? What do I even want my identity to be? And as you're talking
Hmm.
about the different cultures that you've had to adapt to and the different people that you're around, makes me think of how even for me, I find myself speaking in different like tonations and accents when I'm with different people. And
Hmm.
and I caught that when I was as I was maybe like after college or something. As I was getting older, I just started noticing that about myself. And yeah, so we start becoming these experts. And then one day you just, for me, one day you just realize like, wait, how do I actually even sound? How do I want to sound? And that brings
Hmm.
me also to something that I've noticed in so many families. A lot of immigrant children or immigrant kids are taught to chase stability first and then identity later. If they're even given that choice, right? You're supposed to get the
Hmm.
degree, get the job, get the financial security, and then maybe you can think about what fulfillment means or what fulfillments could look like. And for you, you have built a successful career in finance, right? You've earned all these elite designations and you still chose to publicly talk about belonging,
Hmm.
identity, and self-worth. Did that feel rebellious in any way?
It did, and I kind of like it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I actually do because I don't, well, basically, I wasn't really. I know that my parents wanted me to choose, stability over everything else, and I know that they didn't really, I would say, push me to go to finance. It was my decision, but definitely they wanted me
Mm,
to have a very stable career and so forth.
yes.
And I just, especially when I was a kid, I was like this obedient little girl who just really follow whatever I was told, that I never questioned anything. And then what
Mm-hmm.
happened is, of course, now that I'm like speaking about a lot of these things on social media, having published my book, having my podcast, I do feel like I'm quite rebellious and true, like
Mm-hmm.
honestly speaking, no one from my family knows about that, and not even my parents. So I just talk about it as if it was really like this is my time to do it, and so I openly talk about it, and I do feel rebellious because I was not that kind of girl when I was a kid.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, and why was it important for you to tell these stories publicly too, or speak up about these topics?
Because I feel like we just grew up believing that we just have to be a certain way, and
Mhm.
there is only one way of living your life. But I feel like if I am going to talk about this more and more and more people can relate to me. More people can also do the same thing about speaking about their struggles and so forth. And I know that by
Mhm.
speaking up about all of these things, I realize that there are other like people in the same boat as me. Like I just
Yes.
I just watched a movie like pretty recently about this boy who was born and raised in Italy as well, and his parents are from Bangladesh, and he comes from this traditional Muslim family. And it was so
Mm.
interesting when I watched this movie because he's like, "Oh, is it gonna be a scene if I start dating this Italian girl? Like, is this gonna be considered a scene?" And I remember like I used to think that too when I was a kid, when I was like a teenager. And so whether it's me or someone else, we all go through the same struggle. And so maybe for the external world, this like looks silly. It's like, oh, what's the problem with that? But it is a big deal for South Asian community, like to do something that it's not like outside of your community, to start dating at
Yeah.
a young age, to do things,
Yeah.
like it's really forbidden, really. It's
Mhm.
forbidden. And
Mhm.
so it
Mhm.
was
Mhm.
interesting to see how more and more people are speaking up.
Yeah. Yeah. Now, is your family from Bangladesh?
Yes, both of them.
I see. I see. I see. And oof, I mean, there's so many layers to that because as you were speaking, I was just thinking to myself, huh, I don't even know what the word for dating is in my native language. I don't,
Hmm.
we have a word for marriage, which is aware, and I don't know if we have anything. I'll have to ask my mother because I don't know that that's even that's even a concept, that we even have, and yeah, you bring up some really important points here about how sometimes we think we're experiencing something all by ourselves, and then we start to speak up, and then all of a sudden we realize, oh, I'm not the only one experiencing this. Oh, I'm actually not alone. And you're right. I think even for me as a therapist, that is one of the reasons why I love to share all of my different experiences too, especially on social media and in public, for people to understand that mental health is something that everyone has, and we have to
Hmm.
prioritize that. And so if people are having struggles with depression, anxiety, all of the different things that we go through in life, that they're not alone, that even those of us who have gone to school and have all the degrees and have all the experience and the trainings and the certifications, we also have mental health struggles too, you know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm
Yeah.
with you on that. And even mental health, it's a taboo topic in a lot of
Yeah.
this, in a lot of the
Hmm.
cultures around the world. No one talks about it. And
Hmm.
it's like mental health, you are going through depression. What's that? Like no one
Right. Yeah.
speaks about it. No one is educated about that. They just think
Hmm.
that, oh, you just had a bad day and that's it. And you just,
Yeah.
kind of
Let's get
walk
over it.
over that. Yeah, exactly.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, just get over it. It's not that serious.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. So, and I think also, many people who'll be listening to this are realizing that success and self-discovery don't always happen at the same pace, right? You can have one completely figured out while you are struggling with the other, and it's part of life. It's just
Yes.
part of the human experience. So, Remy, you speak multiple languages. You've lived in different countries. Do you feel like your personality changes depending on the language or culture that you're operating in, and which version of yourself feels the most like home?
So it's a question that I was asked many times, and I'm still asked that question. I don't know if I have a
Mhm.
complete answer, and I'm not even sure if my answer is the right one. I do think that there is a different side of me that comes out when I speak in Italian, and that's the language that makes me feel like I am at home. I feel like I can really be myself, especially like after all the years that have passed. I feel like I am my most self among my Italian friends, and I feel like there is a more a loud side of me that comes out.
Mhm.
Whereas when I am, let's say, speaking in English, I think there is a more professional side that comes out. And I think it also
Mhm.
because of the fact that I use, like, let's say, English more on a like professional level and
I
like in the
see.
corporate job. I feel like it's the same thing with French as well. And with Bengali as well, I feel like there is a different side that comes. It's more like a rough sometimes, I feel like. So yeah, I think I don't know if the personality changes. I think there is a different side of us that comes out, but our personality stays the same. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a different, I like that. There's a different side of us that comes out. And I can definitely relate to that. And as I'm even saying this out loud, I don't speak as many languages as you, right? I speak Akan or Tree, which is a Ghanaian language, and I speak English. I'm conversational in French, and I just picked up my Duolingo maybe it's been how many? I think it was maybe sometime last year. I picked it back up because we learned French in Ghana because we're surrounded
Mhm.
by French-speaking countries, and so it was part of our educational curriculum to learn French. I wish I had taken it a little bit more seriously, but I didn't. And so
Mhm.
now that I'm older, I've gone back and I'm relearning some of it, and I think about some of the other Ghanaian languages that I'm able to speak or understand. There's a few other dialects that I speak, and I'm realizing that the core is the same, right?
Yeah.
Um, yeah, it's the same. And I think part of it is also becoming more and more comfortable in who I am. Because if
Mhm.
you'd asked me this question a couple of years ago, I would have probably had a different answer because I felt like I was code switching whenever I was amongst my Ghanaian friends, and I was worried about how they were going to perceive me, and I was worried about, oh, your accent, you sound too American. And so I would try to make sure that I emphasize certain letters when I was speaking because I didn't want to come off as a certain way. And there was
Mhm.
so much just going on in my mind. And as I've gotten comfortable with where I am, I mean, what they see is what they get now.
Yeah. Nice.
And yeah, and it's been a very beautiful transition, just being able to like show up as myself, and bringing
Mhm.
people joy and making people laugh. And I'm also realizing that sometimes like different languages unlock different emotions also for me in the
Yeah.
ways in which like I show up. And so when you talk about your Italian friends, I'm like, yeah, actually, yeah, there's a difference there. And I imagine that folks who are listening can relate to that too.
Yes. Yeah, for
Mhm.
sure, for sure. And
Mhm.
um yeah, and there's like a different like I think you just spoke about like accent. I know that I was always trying to imitate the American accent, especially because
Mhm.
especially during my teenage year, I would watch MTV and I would
Mm,
watch all these
mhm.
American shows based
Yes.
in the States, like The Hills, Laguna Beach, like MTV
Yeah.
Cribs. I was like, this is
Friends.
exactly
Oh, yes.
yeah, yeah. And I was like, this is how I want to sound. But now I'm like, why was I even thinking that? I should just keep my accent and be proud of the way I
Mhm.
sound. But it took me
Mhm.
a while to come to that realization as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we used to watch some of those shows when I was younger. Cribs was one of my favorite shows. And I also went to an American school. I would say it was an American school, it was an international school. But I was also surrounded by people who were from so many different countries. A lot of the expats brought their kids to that school too. So then there was this like mixture of different accents, but then the American one was the big one, right?
Hmm.
That was the
Hmm.
coveted one. And so I've always had, I would say that I don't always sound like a typical Ghanaian. Not that, not that Ghanaians are a monolith or anything like that. No. Different people
Mhm.
from different parts of the country are going to sound differently. Um, and also we just have this, I call it a blessing, where sometimes when you just hear somebody speaking, you're like, ah, this person from Ghana. I know they're from Ghana. So
Yeah, yeah, and
yeah.
I feel the same way. I feel the same way. Like just a few weeks ago, I was in Morocco, and then this lady comes up to me. She's of course speaking to me in English, and
Yeah.
she's like, "Oh, do you know if this bank accepts like a credit card, or do they accept credit cards to like withdraw money?" I said, and at the moment I heard her, I was like, "Are
Yeah.
you Italian?" And then we just started to speak Italian because I recognize the accent. So I think
Yeah.
this is why we need to keep our accent because it helps us to
Yeah.
recognize the people that are like similar to us. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, that's so beautiful. Yeah, you do recognize people. And sometimes you can even tell by the facial features too, where
Yeah.
people are from. Um and as we have all these like different accents within us and different, emotions and whatever. I don't know, sometimes I don't know about you, but sometimes it feels like I'm running like several different operating systems at once. Really. So
Yes.
so, but yeah, moving on, there's so many immigrant daughters who have become high achieving adults, myself
Mhm.
included, you included, especially. We become these high achieving adults, and I'm really proud of us. I'm proud of how far we've come and how far we continue to go. But some of us secretly struggle with guilt when it comes to choosing ourselves, and it's not because we don't love our families, but it's because we have, and I'm including myself in this because this is something that I struggle with, but we've spent so many years being responsible for everybody else. So I'm curious for you, what did self-love actually look like beyond, the IG quotes version of it, the Instagram
I
quotes.
Yeah, I think so. Here's the thing. I don't think I even knew what the term self-love really meant. I
Mm,
didn't even think there was such thing as self-love because I grew up thinking that my job is really to take care of everyone, loving everyone
mm,
else, but no one ever teaches you that you should love yourself first. And I really had a
mhm,
lot of struggle in understanding what this really meant. And you mentioned at the beginning boundaries, which is again another thing that I was not really thought about because
mm,
I grew up thinking there's no such thing as boundary. I didn't even know what boundary meant. But the
yeah.
more I think I spoke about all of the struggles and I spoke about these things with a lot of like people coming from different with different backgrounds, I finally understood what self-love really meant. And for me, self-love really means it means many different things like putting yourself first, celebrating yourself. It
Mm-hmm.
means being compassionate with yourself. Like I know that I'm like so like hard on myself for so many things. Like if something goes wrong, I'm just beating up myself. Like I'm like, why did I not do this wrong? But I learned to give myself grace. I think that's something that I was never doing that for myself. Like I think it's so easy to like say those things to a friend, but when it comes to yourself, you don't do that. So I feel like I learned to give
Yeah.
myself grace. Don't feel bad about something if it went did it a wrong way. Maybe
Mhm.
you failed something. Maybe you did something wrong at work. It's okay. It's okay. Tomorrow it's gonna be a better day. So I'm telling those things to myself, and I think that comes from
Yes.
the fact that I learned what self-love means, and it's really about being more compassionate towards yourself
Yes.
and to appreciating who you are and also celebrating yourself, which is so
Mm-hmm.
important.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I just had that conversation with my son this week, and we were my 7-year-old, and we were talking about how some of the language that we use with ourselves, we wouldn't dare use with other people because we love them. And so, how much more ourselves? And I think one of the things that people forget is that we cannot continue to give people things that we don't even know what it looks like. If you don't know what self love is, or if you don't understand what self love is, how are you really going to be able to love others? You
Mhm.
know? And I've read a Bell Hooks book all about love, and it's really shifted the way that I even look at the concept of love, and how I thought I understood what love was. only to realize, oh, no, there's a more depth to this. And and even in that love, sometimes it goes hand in hand with boundaries. And I don't know for you, but I think about boundaries that are kind of hard to set, especially when it comes to our families and our roles as immigrant daughters. And I don't know if maybe there's some boundaries that you have found are the hardest to set.
Yeah, I think boundaries has been really hard for me to really implement, and I had to read the book as well about how to put boundaries with your family members, and I really
Mhm.
had to read deeper about what boundaries meant because
Mhm.
again, you grew up in a community where your time is everyone's time. If you have
Yes.
if someone invites you to something, you have to say yes
Yeah.
automatically.
Hmm.
You just have to pretty much say yes to everything and please other people. But I think
Hmm.
boundaries, you have to put them, especially with your family members, because they are the
Hmm.
ones who like step on it. And
Hmm.
there, and you also have to make sure that they are reinforced. Because I think it's one thing putting them, but it's another thing reinforcing them. And
Yes.
I think a lot of it came again with a lot of sense of guilt at the beginning because I was like, I
Hmm.
just felt like I was a bad daughter. I feel like I was a bad person. And you
Hmm.
also grew up thinking that you cannot hurt anyone. Like your job is really to make sure that everyone is happy and everyone is at
Yeah,
peace. But who's giving you your own peace? And so
exactly.
for me, like to say no and be like, yeah, I cannot do this today or I cannot come has been really the hardest because I could see people's reactions of not being satisfied with
Hmm.
my answer, but I really had to
Hmm.
let go of how people were feeling because
Yeah,
it's not my job to
yeah,
fix that.
yeah,
They are
yeah,
responsible with how they feel.
yeah.
That's not my job. And I just have to protect my energy. So I really had to learn that, like protecting my energy and
Hmm.
my well-being, which is not it's not really taught in many
Hmm.
cultures.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. Hmm. And also, when it comes to boundaries, it's a dreaded word in so many different cultures, but it starts internally too, right? You have
Hmm.
to make that decision. Like sometimes when people say, "Oh, I'm setting a boundary," they forget that it actually starts internally. And so internally, what an example of that would be, I'm not going to be moving my plans for people. Right. If I have plans, I'm not going to
Hmm.
move them. And so that's going to include if you come up to me with same day plans of, hey, auntie is having a party, and you're like, oh, when? Oh, it's today at 5, right? You've set that boundary in your mind already, and you can just say, "Oh, I'm not going to be able to make it." What do you mean you're not going to be able to make it? Well, because I wasn't given advance notice, right? And so I'm not going to be able to make it because the boundary in your mind is that I'm not going to be shifting my plans for the sake of the family. Now, this is where
Hmm.
sometimes we get a little stuck, and then the boundaries end up being really rigid. Well, what if you don't have anything going on at 5 p.m.? Right? You get to say, okay, you know what? Typically, I don't do same day plans, but today at 5 p.m., I don't have anything going on. So I'm going to allow myself to go, right? I'm
Hmm.
going to allow myself to maybe go a little later. But another
Hmm.
important distinction is that, self love sounds really beautiful. It sounds like an amazing thing, but it's going to be beautiful and wonderful and amazing until it requires us disappointing someone, disappointing our parents, disappointing our family, and then suddenly it just gets really, really uncomfortable.
It does. It does
Mhm.
get uncomfortable, especially
Mhm.
because you don't want to disappoint the people that you care the most.
Mhm.
But I also think that our parents grew up with a different mindset, and we need to
Yes.
accept that. And they also
Yes.
have to accept our generation
Mhm.
and how we
Mhm.
are growing up.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and And really, I think there's so much pressure on you if your job is really just to make everyone happy. Because I also had to learn about not good enough. That's a common
Mhm.
terminology that I hear is that you can reach a certain level, but then once you're
Mhm.
there, again, it's not enough. Like it's
Yeah.
never, never enough. It's like, what is it that I'm supposed to be doing then?
Oh, yeah. And that's why this podcast exists too, because when you talk about parents understanding, that is one of the reasons why it's been such a pleasure having the different perspectives. I've had my mom on for a couple of episodes. I had my mentor on for an episode. There's all these different parents that are also, sharing some of their thoughts so that we can understand them better, and
Hmm.
so that's why I think this has been such a pleasant experience, just, doing this podcast, meeting people like you and having these conversations too. And you have a podcast too, right? And it's called Stories Beyond Borders.
That's right. I also have
Yeah.
a podcast. That's
Mm-hmm,
right. And
mm-hmm.
it's called
Yeah.
Stories Beyond Borders. And it's a podcast about immigration stories, which I think it is so important to
Mm-hmm.
have that conversation. And
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
as immigrants, we go to specific struggles, which is often trying to integrate, trying to fit in, trying to assimilate,
Mm-hmm.
sometimes even
Mm-hmm.
forgetting our origins. We want to give up on that identity, home identity, because we just want to be, from that new country, or
Mm-hmm.
sometimes we want to be very Canadian, we want to be very American, but
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
we should celebrate our origins, our diversity. It's part of our
Mm-hmm.
storytelling. And this is why I have so many guests where we talk about stories of immigration, because a lot of them move because they don't have a choice. Like they really don't have a
Yes.
choice. It's not because we
Mm-hmm.
want to, it's because we just can't
Mm-hmm.
live anymore in our home country.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's
Mm-hmm.
interesting to see the different perspectives. And I really enjoy the conversations.
Yeah, 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 yeah. That is so beautifully said. And what is a conversation about immigration or identity that you think that society still handles very poorly or maybe a little too superficially?
I I do think the issue of stereotypes is quite big. I think we just tend to
Mm-hmm.
stereotype people and put them in boxes. I think if someone looks a certain way, we're just automatically saying, okay, this person is from X, Y, and Z. But honestly, there are layers and layers to a person's
Yes.
identity. Like even myself, like people just look at me and assume, and I'm like, no, that's not just it. There is a lot more than that. So please
Mm-hmm.
don't put me in a box. I think people have
Yeah.
this tendency. I think people need to be a bit more open-minded and be more curious, especially with the questions that they ask,
Yeah.
because even a simple question such as where are you from, it's very difficult to answer sometimes, very difficult, because
Mm-hmm.
I personally do not know what that means. It does it mean where I grew up? Does it
Mm-hmm.
mean where my parents are from? Does it mean the country where I
Right.
studied? Does it mean the country where
Mm-hmm.
I've been living? Does it mean the country where I've been working, like from? Like, what does it mean? Is it my
Mm.
passport? Because that it changes.
Okay. Yeah. You're making a really important point here. When people ask the question, where are you from? It's yeah. I've personally been leaning a little bit more towards, where's your family from? If I'm trying
Mhm.
to understand some of those the nuances and things like that. That's where I've been leaning a little bit more towards. And I don't know if maybe like that's a I don't know, how does that question land for you?
Uh, it was um it was quite, I would say that the answer changed throughout the years.
Hmm.
I think at the beginning I would just choose one country, like I would say I'm from Italy, and people would just stare at me and be like, "Are you sure?" Because they don't look Italian. And then I
Yeah.
was like, "Okay, I'm gonna just change the next time they ask me this question. I'm just gonna say I'm from Bangladesh." But then even that, they would just stare at me because
Mm.
they will ask me, "Oh, so when did you move from Bangladesh?" I was like, "No, actually, I did not move from there. I actually moved from Italy." And then I have to go back and tell them
Mm.
how I grew up in Italy, how I was born in Italy. Like
Mhm.
it's just so difficult. So now I just say I am Italian by birth, Bengali by blood, and that's it. If they
Oh,
get it, good. If they don't get it, that's their thing.
that's on you. You're gonna have to figure
Yeah,
that out. That
yeah,
that's yeah, that's a nice way to find your own style and your own wording and your
yeah.
own meaning also. And I love asking that because sometimes some of the most important stories like yours, they don't necessarily fit neatly into that headline, right? Or that
Hmm.
stereotype, and somebody asks a question of, like, oh, where are you from? Well, for me, I can say I'm from Ghana, right? Simple, boom, boom, that's it. But then for people who have
Hmm.
lived in different countries or were born in different countries, and it's just so there's so much complexity around it, and I think that's one of the things that makes it really beautiful too.
Yeah, yeah. I agree.
Mhm.
I agree.
So, I have a bit of a rapid fire section here that
I
I've been
love
kind of
this.
creating as we go. And so I'm going to ask you a few quick questions and just answer with the first thing that comes to mind. Okay. So,
Got it.
what food instantly reminds you of home?
Pasta.
Pasta, pasta. Okay, okay, okay.
Yes,
All right.
yes.
Nice, nice. Yeah, I love pasta too. What piece of advice from your family has aged the best?
Probably that $1 makes a huge difference. I think it just stayed with me the
Mm.
longest. Yeah.
Wow, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about the opposite. What piece of advice would you say has aged the worst?
What will people say? I grew up with that expression.
Okay,
Yeah, I
okay.
hate that.
What
I
would
hate
people
it. I
say?
hate that expression. I just hate it.
Yeah, I think there's a book by that title too, or something along
Uh,
those lines.
it's so there is a movie, I think, and there is a book
Mm-hmm.
that says, "What will aunties say?"
Oh, yeah, 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 yeah. I think
Yeah,
I've seen that. Yeah, yeah.
yeah.
So what is one thing that younger Ermi would be proud of?
Probably that I finally spoke up about many of these struggles that I've been going through.
Okay, okay, okay. And what is one thing that younger Ermi would be shocked by?
I would say probably that I'm like rebellious.
That answer does not surprise me as someone who grew up very compliant and obedient and all of those
Yeah.
things. Yeah, yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So before we wrap up, right? What is the most immigrant thing about you that no amount of professional success, education, or life experience has erased?
So I like have a lot of like when I go out and everything, like I usually buy stuff and
Mm-hmm.
let's say maybe a sweater that I bought like 20 years ago and maybe it
Mm-hmm.
doesn't fit me, I still keep it. It's our thing to like keep old clothes even when they don't fit
Yes.
you because you're like, it could be reused
Mm-hmm.
eventually,
Mm-hmm.
and it's
Mm-hmm.
so immigrant of like me,
Mm-hmm.
of South Asian community, we just keep every single clothes that we buy.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is so funny you say that because I actually still have a dress from high school
Oh my
that,
gosh. Yeah,
yeah, that I
same.
brought from Ghana here to the US. I still have it and I still wear it, you know.
It's
And
crazy.
honestly, I hope that we never lose these parts. I really
Yeah.
do. I really do because I think that these are some of like the little things that often connect us and keep us connected to where we're from.
That is so right. I agree with you. And that's why I keep them because they bring me back to my childhood, my teenagehood.
Yeah.
They're my memories. They're part of my,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
things that
Mm-hmm.
I grew up with. So no, that's why I
Yeah.
keep them.
Yeah, yeah, I love that for us. Oh, Army, thank you so much for joining me today. I've absolutely loved this conversation, and I know that so many people who are going to be listening are going to see pieces of themselves in your story. And it's really been an honor hearing your story today. And so for everyone who's listening, if you've enjoyed today's conversation, please make sure that you check out Army's podcast, her work, her writing. Her podcast is Stories Beyond Borders, and I think it would be awesome to just make those connections. And also, Ermi, if people are looking for you, where can they find you?
They can definitely look me up on LinkedIn. I'm pretty active, so it's Urmi Hossain. And if you want to purchase my book, it's called Discovering Your Identity: A Rebirth from Interracial Struggle, which is available on Amazon. And it's basically about the conversation that we just had about identity and finding our identity. And I am also involved with an organization called Women in Leadership. So they can just Google Women in Leadership Foundation Canada and find out more about the work that we do for women in leadership.
Perfect, perfect. And we'll have all of this information also in the show notes so that you all can connect because it's really important that we amplify our voices and we share these resources. And so, as always, if this episode has made you think about somebody, please send it to them. Share it with your siblings, your immigrant parents, share it with your friend who is really still trying to figure out where they belong and who they are and their identity and all the layers that come with it. And also remember that you don't have to choose between where you came from and who you're becoming. Honestly, you don't. Sometimes the most beautiful thing we can do is learning how to hold both and existing in that bicultural space because we're worth it. So thank you so much for listening, and I will see you on the next episode. So guess what? We are opening up some slots for a sponsorship. If you've been watching or listening to this podcast and you've been enjoying it as much as we have been enjoying recording it, I would love to invite you to consider sponsoring us. You can reach out to me at consult at Phoebe Brako LMFT.com. That's consult at phoebebrakolmft.com. We have a wide range when it comes to our audience, and we would love for our audience to hear about you, your service, or your product. Thank you so much.